Do you know what the 30-30-30 recovery rule is? Almost every elite athlete I speak to follows it, and almost no amateur athlete does. And here's the interesting part. It has nothing to do with cold plunges, supplements, wearables, or any other biohacks. In fact, chasing hacks is exactly why we feel stuck and we're not improving. By the end of this video, you'll know the system elite athletes actually use and why it works better than any biohack ever will. Most athletes have all the information out there. They track all of their metrics, they train hard, yet somehow they often feel stuck, incomplete, or simply tired. They think they need better tools, whereas they actually need better habits. And I learned this the hard way myself. I was a pro athlete, overtrained myself on multiple occasions, almost ran myself into the ground, and had to completely reinvent my training approach when I switched sports. However, that process turned me into a published author, an endurance and mindset coach, and now I run these challenges to test the ideas myself, not just talk about them. In this video, I'll break down what I call the Anti-Biohack Performance System, essentially 5 habits that matter more than any biohack. After all, elite athletes don't win because of hacks. They win because their habits and the systems they built around them. The Anti-Biohack Performance System is very simple. You get 5 things right, and then your energy improves, your recovery speeds up, and you will be able to handle more training load. However, if even one of them is off, no biohack will help you. So let's get going. Rule number 1. Control intensity before you add anything else. Realistically, many people will think that training harder would get you places and equal progress. However, training harder is just the stimulus. It's the absorption of that stimulus what matters. Without putting things into right orders, training harder just equals more fatigue. And I've been there. I speak from experience. I used to race every interval all out as if it was my last. I wanted to race my training partners. I wanted to improve. I was very, very ambitious. However, that ambition and motivation almost ended my career because when it mattered, I actually felt flat because I wasn't able to recover in time. So what you can do here is, first of all, calculate your training zones and more importantly, stick to them. I'll link below my calculator, which you can use to calculate your heart rate training zones. That calculator uses the Carbonen formula, which is a formula derived from thousands of various VO2 max lactate tests, and it typically produces heart rate zones that are very close to the actual one. So it's a great place to start. Go to the link below and check yours. Then the next thing is split your training into easy days and hard days. Your hard days should be 1, 2, or maybe 3 workouts per week, no more. And then the rest should be very easy. Overall, you should aim that around 80% of your training should be very easy. Think zone 1, low zone 2, maybe mid zone 2. And then the remaining 20% will be your harder days. That's when you will do harder intervals like 6 times 6 minutes, or the hard VO2 max Norwegian 4x4, or even 30 seconds repeat. Those will be your hard days. But the easy days, really stick to them being easy. Go for the lower zone 2 or higher zone 1 sessions and just put a lot of volume in. That will help you. That will help to prepare the body for the overall load and help you recover from those harder days. Also, try to schedule your training so that a harder day is followed by a very, very easy day where you're just going through the gears, just getting your body to move. Think zone 1 training. Heart rate wise, it can be as low as 120. I sometimes do my recovery runs following a threshold or VO2 max day at around 125 beats per minute, even though my zone 2 running is around 145 beats per minute. So keep your days very easy and then make your harder days harder. And if your intensity is wrong, this next habit will literally not work, no matter how disciplined you are. Habit number 2, fuel for the work ahead. In triathlon, we always joke that nutrition is the 4th discipline, because every triathlon race is long enough that if you are under fueling, you will feel it later on in the day. When I first started training for long distance triathlon, my training hours rose and I quickly realized how underfueled a lot of my training sessions are, and more importantly, how underfueled my training session used to be as an elite sprint kayaker. And when I simply started eating enough and fuel my sessions with carbohydrates, my recovery improved without even changing my volume. So things to focus here is, as I already mentioned, the 30-30-30 rule. Essentially, eat 30 grams of carbs, 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of exercise. That will give the body initial energy to start rebuilding the damage that was done by hard training. And more importantly, this will happen in the window when the body is more responsive to it. So carbs give you energy to start the recovery, and protein, besides providing the building blocks, also helps to regulate cortisol and with that control the blood sugar, which reduces cravings later on. Second thing to do is calculate your TDE. That's total daily energy expenditure. There are multiple calculators you can use for that to understand what energy needs your body are actually going through, maybe with your day job, with your intense training schedule and some other errands. Once you get the basis, then you take your a couple of days worth of food journal and you input that into AI to help check if that actually meets your demand. You can also use my app, where you can go into a food journal on my app. You can take a photo of your food or input what you have eaten, and it helps to analyze how much energy is there, how much protein, how much fats and carbs you have, and how much your body actually needs. And from here, having that information, next you want to fuel your harder and longer and more intense days appropriately. So don't train on empty unless it's a very low intensity exercise and under around 1 hour or so. For higher intensity or harder days, you want to be looking at around 5 to 7 grams of carbs per kilo of body weight throughout the entire day. And that includes also nutrition during the training session. And for easier days, you can do it at around maybe 2 or 4 grams of carbs per kilo of body weight. That's also called carbohydrate timing. And finally, you always want to be well hydrated. So when you go to the toilet, check your urine. It should be pale and with not a lot of smell. So if it's very dark and smelly, you might want to be including more hydration into your diet. Rule number 3. Every good athlete I speak to focuses more on the quality of sleep than on the quality of training. Think about it. It's the only time when our body can fully relax and not process multiple things that is happening at the same time. Of course, we need to sleep long enough, and here studies generally suggest that anywhere between 7 to 9 hours is the norm. And if a person sleeps less than 4 or 5 hours, he or she usually starts to show symptoms of sleep fatigue, lack of cognitive ability, and also decreased performance level. But more importantly, what is the quality of your sleep? And here, one very good perspective you might want to look at is what is your resting heart rate before you go to sleep? So sometimes we think about resting heart rate as the heart rate measurement that we take first thing in the morning after we've rested. However, if we focus on heart rate before we go to sleep, then we make sure we go to sleep when we're actually relaxed. And that helps to shorten the time between our head hits the pillow and our body actually starts to relax. So if we eat something very big before going to bed, it will actually take a couple of hours for the body to process it. So our heart rate will be elevated, our core temperature will be elevated, and that part of sleep will be impaired. The same as with hard training session. If we do a hard training session at, let's say, 9 p.m. and then go to bed at, around 11 or 11:30, it will take the body quite some time to process that training session, to normalize the hormones and get back into homeostasis before we can start relaxing. So if we follow a few sleep hygiene tips before going to bed, we can actually improve the quality of sleep and get much better recovery, and also our heart rate variability, HRV, will be higher in the morning, which will show that our nervous system will be relaxed and better able to absorb the training load that we will put it through. So if you only get one thing out of this whole video, let it be this. Make sure your resting heart rate is low before you go to bed. So don't eat too much. Try to get less of a screen time, ideally an hour before with no screen, and hydrate. Good. Rule number 4. Mobility. Move more and move better. The reality of our life is that as we age, our muscles start to atrophy. Our body is pretty smart, so it will let go of anything that it doesn't use, because then it will need to use more energy to sustain that. but also from our daily life. We spend less time moving. We sit more at the desk, we lay down, and we do sports less. That is also the reason why people typically get injured, because they don't have the strength in a specific muscle group or a ligament to support the load that we all of a sudden put the body through. So, for example, a person used to do a lot of football with his friends at age 20 when he was very young and active. And everything was fine. And then when he's 30 or 35, after 10 or 15 years sitting at the desk and working for 8 hours every day, he decided to go play with his friends some football. And then he would do a couple of tackles and a couple of quick turns left and right. And this is a very common case when a person's ACL is being torn or meniscus is torn. And it's a frequent case, and the reason for that primarily is that supportive structures, so the stabilizing muscles around the knee, weren't strong enough to support all of a sudden the external rotation and all of the complex movements, where person all of a sudden started to run in multiple directions instead of his very two-dimensional work pattern when he comes to work, sits, and then turns. It's a very common, but it's also a very sad story. But more importantly, it can be preventable. We don't become injured because we're getting older. We become injured because we start to lack conditioning and certain strength in stabilizing muscles, which is why the more we move, the more our body is prepared to handle all of that training load. So my tip here is spend at least 10 minutes every day to take your body through entire range of motion. It can be a yoga flow every morning. It can be a mobility session where we're focusing on a specific muscle group, or it can be a Pilates class every couple of days, or a yoga class. In my book, The Resilient Athlete, there is a chapter on a so-called Prehab, and Prehab is essentially the same thing as rehab exercises, only before you get injured. So as we move through the day, as we do sports, as we do our daily lives, our body sends us signals. What is tight, what is cracking, what hurts. And if we start to listen to those signals and educate ourselves how muscles are operating, what exercises typically help to relieve that, and include those exercises into our daily life, then we don't have to go through a process of being injured, but we need to make sure that we do those exercises on a frequent basis. Discovering this mobility and prehab concept is actually one of the biggest reasons how I was able to transition sports and build volume quite significantly in injury-prone sports as running. And number 5, strength train consistently. In any sport around the world, you never hear someone yelling, throw weaker, run slower. It's always faster, harder, stronger. Strength is the cornerstone of success in any sport, but as we age, it becomes more and more important. As I already mentioned, we're losing strength, but also in order to be able to complete all of these movements and complete them with force and energy, we have to be strong, and more importantly, we have to be strong overall. So it's not only about having an 8-pack abs or looking jacked from the upper body, but more about the quality of movements that we can do, and so that we are balanced from top to bottom, from left to right, from front to back. Because after all, a resilient athlete is a well-rounded athlete. That person can basically jump into any sport and perform fairly well. And to be able to do that, you don't need much. You need maybe 1 or 2 dedicated strength sessions, let's say 30 or 40 minutes at a time. Or you can include strength exercises into your daily routine, into that same morning routine where you do 20 push-ups, 10 pull-ups, 100 squats, a couple of 100 sit-ups, and that's it. It takes 5, maybe 10 minutes, which you can spread throughout the entire morning, and that will give you a ton of benefits already. What you want to be looking for is a balance between your frontal side, anterior, and your back side. So, for example, for upper body, you want to be doing as much pushing as much as pulling. The same is for the lower body. You want to be focusing as much on your quads as much on your hamstrings. TRX is a great tool for that. It's a balanced suspension system which adds a little bit of complexity in a form of balance and engages core more. Also for the lower body, you want to be doing more of a single leg work, especially if you're a runner. That helps to prevent a lot of running injuries if you can include some quarter squats with your with one of your leg, or include a lot of skipping, double leg or single leg. That helps a lot in improving bone density and preventing a lot of injuries. I recently heard someone say that in order to have great fitness, you want to be running more than lifters and lifting more than runners. And I think it summarizes it fairly well. You want to be building your aerobic base, but you also want to be strong so that you're able to sustain all of that training load and continue improving. So that's it. Those are the 5 rules. No ice bath, no cryotherapy, no supplements, not a single biohack. And that's why I call it the Anti-Biohack Performance System, because habits beat biohacks every time and in the long term. Over the next videos, I will show you how to stack these habits into a realistic week so that they actually stick when life gets into the way. And if you need help analyzing your lifestyle, optimizing it, aligning it with your training and work needs, your family needs, that's exactly why I built my app. It's called the Resilient Athlete Coach. It helps you manage training load, habits, nutrition, recovery, all in a single place. Try it out. First week is free. So there you go. Start simple, stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next video.